Hello and welcome to The Talk, a dental protection podcast for hygienists and therapists. My name is Lesley Harrison. I'm a dentist and a Dentolegal Consultant here at Dental Protection. By way of background, I was a GDP for many years before becoming full-time at Dental Protection. I was also an outreach tutor with Sheffield Uni for 8 years, and this involved teaching and supporting hygiene and therapy students as well as dental students. I am delighted today to speak with Amber Ojak, a multi-award-winning dental therapist who you may recognise from her popular Instagram page, the Edinburgh Dental Hygienist. It's a pleasure to have you here today, Amber. So how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Just plodding along. Glad it's Friday and the end of the week. I'm happy to be here, and thanks so much for inviting me on.
Oh, well, it's absolutely great to have you. So I thought, first of all, we'd just talk a little bit about your background as a therapist. So you qualified in Edinburgh in 2018 and you now work in private practice. Is that right?
Yes, so qualified in 2018. I actually qualified on the Friday and I went straight to work on the Monday.
Blimey.
So I was straight into it. And to be honest, I think it was the best thing I could have done, just doing it that way. I can't believe actually it's coming up to 5 years next year already, the time's just kind of flown by.
Well, that's a sign that you're obviously enjoying it, which is great. So what made you want to be a dental therapist? I just wondered if you had any background in dentistry. I don't know if you did dental nursing before you went on to your therapy course.
No, so ironically, both my parents actually have quite a lot of dental problems, and no one in my family is in the dental industry at all. This just came for me when I was 10. I went under a lot of orthodontic work, and I just had a real interest in kind of the oral health and oral hygiene side of things. And then I got the opportunity to go and shadow a dental hygienist and a dental therapist when I was kind of living in Yorkshire. And I did this over summer, actually, for 3 years at a time. Just over my summer holiday, I went to dental practice and I just shadowed for 2 weeks. And I just fell in love with this role and the whole dental industry and seeing how it works. And I knew that is just what I wanted to do. And here I am.
And obviously your parents will be overjoyed because they'll be able to get free dental treatment from you.
Well, you'd think that, but my parents won't actually let me anywhere near their mouths, which is kind of ironic. My mum does very well with all her TP products and everything that I can bring for her.
Well, I say she wouldn't dare not be, would she?
No, she wouldn't.
So tell me, what did you enjoy most about your course in Edinburgh?
I think I loved how it's such a small cohort in Edinburgh. So I think it's still like this now, but at the time there was just the 10 of us. And it was like a family, and the one-to-one teaching was phenomenal. And we had the best kind of tutors, we had the best equipment, and the experience was just invaluable, knowing that if you had any problems or needed help at any time, the tutor's door was always there. And we just became such a close kind of cohort, and I was really close with some of the other girls in the other years as well. So my time studying was just really invaluable, and it was great to actually work as part of Edinburgh Dental Institute because it kind of opened my eyes to seeing the different departments and what goes on, and it's some really, really amazing stuff, especially in Max Facts. So yeah, it was a really good experience really, and opportunity.
Yeah, no, I think I've come across that when I was teaching therapy students. It is quite a close-knit group, isn't it? Because you're quite small in number compared to dental students. So everybody knows everybody really well and everybody supports each other. So I think it just helps you with your course, doesn't it? As you go along, that you've got that support from everybody else, and you can go to other people for help if needs be. So that sounds great. So I was looking, obviously doing my homework for today, that you were previously an ambassador and a council member for the British Society of Dental Hygiene and Therapy. So how did these roles come about?
So I was involved with the BSDHT kind of from the go. As a student, I was firstly on their Scottish kind of committee group, I think from my second year. So for many years, I had that kind of role with them. And then from that, I went on to becoming the student actual council member on the main committee. I was invited along by Michaela O'Neill, who was the president at that time. And I loved it. I loved being part of that kind of committee group. And then once I qualified, I was elected council member for over a year and a bit on the committee. And I was also involved with the Scottish group still. But yeah, it was really invaluable just to see again, like how these groups work, how they fight for our profession, and it was great to be involved in a lot of projects as well, because of being part of the committee. So yeah, it was a really great experience as well. I'm sure I will return to it one day, actually.
And what sort of projects did you do? What did it involve?
So I helped out with the Prep for Practice toolkit, which was for students. It was just kind of a handbook. There was a few of us working on it, just to give invaluable information that during that time we were going through kind of COVID. So I was very aware that students obviously weren't in the universities as much. It was a lot of teaching from home. And I knew when I qualified, I had so many questions. So it was so good to be able to kind of put all this information in like a toolkit that students who were part of the BSDHT could use. We also did online workshops during the lockdown with Oral-B in kind of co-partnership with them, where patients member of the public could actually sign up to Zoom calls. We would sit there and give them oral hygiene advice and go over any questions they had actually over Zoom.
What a brilliant idea.
Yeah, it really was so novel because it bridged the gap about not being able to get into practice and everyone being at home. And it was just such a funny experience. Like my whole living room just became like a oral hygiene workshop, but I loved doing it. It was good.
Well, I think that's great because in lockdown, I suppose everybody had concerns. There was patients who weren't coming in to see, face-to-face appointments, and I'm sure patients who were used to going in for regular hygiene appointments would be concerned that their oral hygiene was slipping. And so I think that sounds great, just to try and motivate them to keep on top of it. Yeah. So I think this leads into you telling me about your Emmy approach to oral hygiene education. So can you tell me more about it?
Yes, so Emmy was created when I managed to finally get home to Yorkshire, and I was literally just sat on the sofa, and I was just looking at how at that point in time, trying to get kind of this communication across to patients about oral health was so important. And I was sat and I was just playing around with words, and then I thought, educate, motivate, and encouragement are the three most important things, in my opinion, that you can give to patients. And I kind of looked at it and was like, oh, well, you've got Emmy. And then Emmy was kind of born. And I remember I said to my dad, who was sat opposite me, I was like, oh, what do you think of this? And he was like, oh, I just have no idea what you're on about. So I was like, brilliant. So then I just really thought, I'm going to run with this idea and I'm going to try and expand on this whole approach. So I looked at kind of individual aspects of educating, motivating, and encouraging people as a whole. So it went from being just this kind of small theory to becoming kind of an actual structure that I broke down that we could use actually in practice with our patients to kind of expand on just OHI, like oral hygiene instruction. So that looked at so many studies on behavior change kind of techniques, looking at kind of ways that we use our language, our body language, how we get patients more involved. It's such a good structure, I think, that I have created. Especially more, I'd say, student feedback on it is amazing. Like the amazing kind of feedback I got from students saying that I'm going to embody this when I go into practice. It's just putting patients, I say very cheesily, back to basics, because it's taking them right back to the beginning and starting with like the tools and the building blocks of kind of behavior change and their thought process before we even look at physically doing anything. But yeah, it's an ongoing thing, but I absolutely love it. It's one of the best things I think I came up with.
Well, I think it sounds brilliant because I think there's nothing worse when you're in practice of seeing patients who continue to remain unmotivated and disinterested. And sometimes you feel that, you're doing putting in lots of hard work and lots of effort, and they come back for their appointments and nothing has changed. So I think by taking on an approach like this, you are involving the patients, and it's helping them as well take some responsibility for their oral health.
Yeah, and this is it. It is the responsibility, and it's looking at the goalposts for patients. And I mean, I think the most important thing I say to them is kind of, what is your long-term goal for your oral health? And a lot of them say, well, I've never even thought about it like that. And I'm like, well, if you set the goal, then it's how you get to that goal, because we all have personal goals, professional goals. I don't see why we can't have oral health goals as well.
Yeah, and I think it's breaking it down, isn't it, to make those goals more manageable. So rather than giving them something long term, it's baby steps, isn't it, for them to achieve that. And every time they come in, it's, you know, motivating them again and encouraging them again to continue with that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like I say, it's just taking it all back to the basic steps. And I think really it's quite interesting how patients then do get more on board with their oral health and oral hygiene, and also just bringing kind of the practices together as a whole and keeping everyone on the same path, which is the most important thing really with a patient journey.
No, absolutely, because there's nothing worse again from you give the patient some advice and they see somebody else who sort of takes a different approach, which is fairly common in dentistry anyway. But I think if you've got a pathway to follow, then you're more likely to get a consistent approach with that patient, which is less confusing for them in the long term as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So tell me, how have you rolled this out? Is it just in your practice, or have you? I mean, you said that students have been involved in it.
Yeah, so when I created this, I think 2020 2021, I actually did some webinars with Curaprox. I was really lucky to be sponsored by them and kind of pushed this out there, where I had dental hygienists, dental therapists, students, everyone actually watching these at home. And I just kind of broke it down into, like I say, to basics was part one, looking at kind of behavior change, body language and questions. I then did a second part on moving into motivation. It was called looking at motivational interview techniques, and how to use physical kind of tools. And then my last module, if you like, was enhance, maintain, enjoy, which is another kind of co-part on Emmy, and just looking at how we can encourage patients outside of the clinical environment. So I rolled out these webinars, and then I really looked at the feedback, and like I say, just students were so happy with how this was all broken down, and it kind of gave them new food for thought. And then I think moving forward it will be more focused on that aspect, because I don't, it's not kind of wanting to reteach kind of the wheel, if you like. I know we all know what to do, but it's like a new perspective. So yeah, I've done these webinars, and then I've just written kind of articles about it. I've put it on my social media, and then I just try and bring it into the way I am with patients. I'll be honest, at the moment, it kind of took a little backseat just as we're getting back to kind of normality from COVID, because it is absolutely chocker at work.
Yes, I can imagine.
Yeah, but definitely like kind of going into next year, I'm looking at how I can bring it more back in. And I've got some potential like exciting things coming for Emmy. So yeah, it's an ongoing progressive thing, but I like how it's a slow burner, but it's got a really good impact.
No, it sounds brilliant. And what's the feedback been from patients?
Patients really like just looking at things on a different point of view, especially when we look at, like I say, the goalposts and saying, what is it that you want to achieve? Because I think a lot of the time, sometimes we can get lost in telling our patients what we want from them, but sometimes actually turning it around and asking what they would like, and then kind of stripping this back and looking at how we get there with them. Like they've really taken it on board. Especially like the motivation, like how we can really motivate patients, because the biggest bit of feedback that I got from a survey that I actually did a few years ago was patients felt like they were being kind of taught and told off. They felt more resistant to take on our advice if they felt they were being patronized and kind of in a school setting, rather than it actually being about their wants and needs. So I think a lot of them have said it's quite nice not to have that kind of patronizing, if you like, kind of tone, and that they can go home and think about these things for themselves.
Yeah, and again, it's involving them, isn't it? And it sounds like you can, although you've got obviously a structured approach with your educate, motivate, and encourage, you can tailor it to each individual patient, which is what patients want, rather than them feeling that you're just giving them the sort of same sort of advice that you give to everybody. It sounds like it's much more patient focused.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just also because it's so patient focused and personal, it just means that you can really use this to build on your next appointments. And it's kind of looking at how we can use oral hygiene kind of education appointments only. And that's what I want to look at in the future. Which I know is going to be very tricky because it's all about meeting patient expectation, but also it's trying to kind of do what's best for them as well. But that's something I'm going to try and overcome.
Well, it sounds brilliant, and it's very clear as well, as part of the the approach that you're taking, is that good communication here is absolutely key, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the foremost important thing, I'd say, in any kind of dental aspect, not even just with patients, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, from our perspective as an indemnity organisation, I think it's fair to say that good communicators tend to attract less complaints as well, because there's less risk of the patients misunderstanding the approach that you're taking to their care. And so if anybody else is interested in looking at this, we've got online courses and we've got modules on communication and numerous other topics which you can be accessed by all our members. And we've got more information about that on our website. So moving on, obviously COVID had a massive impact on all our lives, personally, professionally, emotionally, mentally. And it seems that you were really proactive in addressing the mental health challenges that colleagues in the profession faced, and indeed are perhaps still facing as a result of lockdown. So you started a social media movement called You're Not Alone. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I think during that time there was a lot of chat about burnout, and burnout was becoming more and more of a kind of highlighted issue, especially in our industry. And when I actually created my social media, I would say it kind of took off during the lockdown and the COVID, and I met so many really amazing professionals. Some of them are now like my best friends, and we were all discussing about how we were mentally struggling and not really coping. And it wasn't just thinking about how patients were worrying, it was becoming very apt that we were all having concerns ourselves. So I wanted to kind of create something to show that we are not alone and that we are all together, and we must raise kind of our voices if we are struggling, because we can all help each other through. So I created a wee post which people kind of shared, kind of put all over social media about kind of their mental health tips, their awareness, things that maybe they were struggling with too. And it was just to kind of encourage people to talk about how they were feeling, and just to remind them that they weren't the only ones going through it. I know for me personally, I actually think really in the end, I went through 3 rounds of burnout, just because going into a brand new working environment when COVID came and we went back to work with all the PPE, the patient demand, the different goalposts were set. And it was hard, it was really hard. I don't think I actually kind of processed things until a bit later down the line, about what happened so quickly. But yeah, it was a really great way just to raise this awareness that we were all going through something, but together.
And I think nowadays, I think people are much more willing to talk about mental health issues. I think in the past, there used to be a stigma attached to that. So I think it's great that you did something like that. And, we've got a wellbeing service as well, which is one of our benefits that we offer all our members. And that includes access to confidential counselling if you need it. And we've got loads of other resources as well tied up with the wellbeing service, which, webinars, podcasts and apps. So I think it's great that you've done something like that. And I think it's really important that everybody in the profession supports each other, because as you say, going back after lockdown, I mean, the challenges that everybody faced were just immense. And, from waiting lists, as you say, to PPE. I mean, hopefully we're coming through that now, but I think the ramifications of that on the profession have been profound and long lasting, haven't they?
Yeah, I agree. And I think, like you say, there was kind of a stigma where, from from just my opinion, I think sometimes before it was seen as a weakness if you spoke about
Absolutely.
mental health.
Yeah.
But now I actually think it's more of a strength if you do talk about this. And yeah, it was just it was a shock. I think it was a shock to my system because, like I say, with the stealth masks, with the gowns, when it's like, God, like 30 odd degrees outside in summer, like it was so much to kind of cope with and contend with. And I mean, I know I struggled a lot because I couldn't go and see my family, and I didn't see like my family for kind of over a year when everything was going on, but I was in clinic trying to push through as well. So I didn't really have kind of that support either. And it was just a very tough time. And I just think, though, that we are such a resilient profession that we went through it, we came through it, and now we're just growing more and more together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So hygiene and therapists definitely play a crucial role in the patient's treatment. So you've now been working since 2018. So have you noticed any changes in that time?
I would say one of the biggest changes is everyone's kind of turning towards aesthetics. I think obviously social media, the news, press, celebrities don't really help. People talking about turkey teeth, God forbid.
Yes, indeed.
Yep, people really like to talk about these fat like phases and crazes that are kind of going on. So they bring it to me, and then I have to tell them and plead not to go to Turkey, or if they do want to go to Turkey, just don't go for the teeth option, go for the sun and a pina colada. So yeah, I think people are becoming more aesthetically aware, and they want like kind of teeth whitening done. They want the composite bonding aspects. They want like whiter teeth, brighter teeth. And there's like just a lot of focus on this. And I notice kind of with their oral health as well, a lot of the things they come to me and say is, oh, my teeth look really like dull, grey. How do I whiten them? That's the main focus. And sometimes when someone comes in with absolutely like raging aggressive perio, I have to kind of rewind and say, I know that we want this end result, but we need to sort your gums and the treatment out first so your teeth don't fall out before we even get to that stage. So yeah, I think there is a shift there that like people's kind of importance of their teeth is becoming more and more a focus at the forefront, but from an aesthetic point of view.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think there's increasing awareness, isn't there, amongst the public about their oral health, but also the aesthetics as well. And I think it's really important to manage their expectations when they walk through the door. It's like no, we can't do this. If you've got oral health issues, and it's sort out the perio first of all. So, and again, that goes back to good communication with your patients, doesn't it? You manage their expectations about what you can do in what sort of time frame and what you're not going to be able to do as well.
Yeah, and I think as well, which is a really, really wonderful thing, is there's becoming a bit more awareness about all the links between kind of periodontal issues and other health-related issues.
Yes.
And this is great, and I really hope it continues to become a more bigger topic talked about in the press and everywhere else, because it's amazing when you actually tell people the links to kind of Alzheimer's stuff and like diabetes that they had no idea. Yeah, they had no clue. And then they kind of go, oh, well, like it is important then to look after my mouth. And I go, yeah, your mouth is like the forefront of your whole body, really.
Yeah, and then it gives them another sort of incentive, doesn't it, to improve. If you can say, well, this is linked, not only linked to your oral health, it's linked to it's a holistic approach, and it can help with other diseases, then I think you can get them a little bit more on board as well, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's scope to even take it into the schools. I know that like at the moment, I see a lot in the press about how kids obviously aren't being able to get registered with dentists on the NHS. And I think that's going to be the next biggest problem. So it's how do we bring this into our kids' like education if they aren't able to actually reach a dentist? I think that might be the next kind of challenge that we face. But we'll have to wait and see.
Indeed. So moving on, is there anything you wish you'd known when you started work? So have you got any advice that you would give to anybody considering a career as a dental therapist?
Oh, absolutely. I would say two things, actually, not just one. I'd say one, really, the learning, the actual learning starts when you're into practice. I think I was quite naive, and I will say this, that I thought, oh, I've qualified, I've got all these skills and knowledge, and I can just go out there. When in fact, you never stop learning. Every day is like a school day. You learn from your like peers, you learn from like your friends in the workplace. Like, I'm very fortunate that I work with some really like valuable, very knowledgeable and well skilled professionals, and I learn so much from them and their work all the time. So I think it's just being prepared that you will learn things, and that sometimes you're going to have a good day, sometimes you're going to have a bad day, but it's how you move forward, and you don't hold on to the bad, you just learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also say just that, like, the world is your oyster. Like, just because you are like young and like newly qualified, it doesn't mean that you can't achieve a lot in a short space of time. Because I know I've managed to do that myself. So I think I would say just go for it. If you want something, go for it.
So yeah, I've been having a think about that as what advice I would give to somebody who wants to go into the dental profession. And I was thinking it would be to make sure that you are a good communicator, to make sure that you treat patients and colleagues in a way that you would like to be treated yourself. And also, as you've just touched on, Amber, as well, ask for help, ask for advice from your colleagues, approach your indemnity organisation if you have a problem or a complaint. And just, yeah, I think the main thing is the communication, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. Because without communication, like it opens up so many kind of wormholes, if you like, and you have to communicate with patients, with your team, with anyone. But there's a certain way to communicate, as we all know, as well. So I'd say it's kind of tailoring how you communicate with each person to the situation. But communication is key.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you've already achieved so much since qualifying. So you're an influencer on Instagram with thousands of followers. You've done your BSDHT work, winning awards, and you're a food blogger plus your day job. So I have to say, I'm absolutely exhausted just even saying that. So tell me, what professional achievement are you the most proud of?
I would say winning my awards, just because, like, I think I never imagined that I would win kind of 3 awards within the first 4 years of qualifying, including kind of when I won Best Hygienist Therapist in Scotland last year. That just baffles me, because I never thought that I could even be considered for such a prestigious award. So I'm very, very proud of that, and it's great because patients really, really enjoy being kind of treated by me on that aspect as well. But yeah, I would honestly just say those are my biggest achievements, because it just shows me that, like, if this is what I'm achieving so far, I'm very excited for what kind of the future holds, actually. But yeah, it's just, I would say that. And also, to be honest, my biggest achievement is probably the connections as well that I've made. Like I say, I've made some of my best friends through my actual dental social media, and I couldn't get through day-to-day kind of life without them now. So it's lovely to have them in my life.
Yeah, and it just goes back to prove, doesn't it, how how important it is to have a good support network when you're in a job that is as stressful as ours can be.
Yeah.
But it certainly sounds like your awards were very, very well deserved and very impressive at this stage in your career. But
Thank you.
Moving on, tell me about your food blog. I'm really intrigued.
Yeah, so I started my food blog, I would say properly about over a year ago. It's called Edible in Edinburgh. And I've always been the biggest foodie. I have such an interest. And I think that does come from my parents, because my mum used to be a chef. In a past life, so I get the love for food, I think, from her, and my dad as well, who's obsessed with food. And I just thought, oh well, someone actually said, oh, why don't you just like post them, like these photos that you take anyway, on a page. So I did start to do that. And then very gradually, it's just kind of grown and grown and grown. And it's the best thing I've ever done, to the point I now feel like I've got 2 jobs. And I love it. Like it's such a great way to switch off sometimes from kind of the dental stresses that are out there. And it's a completely new like world, because I never knew like events that go on happen behind closed doors, and that you have all these other opportunities that can arise from it. And again, I've met some of like the closest friends I think I'll ever meet from that page as well. So it's really, really, really one of the best things I did.
So do you cook at home, or do you just go out all the time and get invited by restaurants to go and put pictures of their food on your pages?
Well, a lot of people don't think I cook, and I get ripped into for this, but I actually do cook. I love to cook myself, and I do post some of my recipes. But half the time, yes, I am out eating in the evenings, because I get invited to a lot of places, or I want to go and explore, or there's like maybe new restaurant openings on. So yeah, I'm a very busy person, but it's really has its rewards, and I love supporting kind of the local economy as well, in Edinburgh as a whole.
Oh, it sounds brilliant. So my next question is now probably a bit daft, having heard about everything that you do. But I was going to say to you, what do you do in your spare time? But it sounds like you don't have very much.
No, I couldn't tell you the last time. I just was able to just sit down for 5 minutes actually. But yeah, I do that with my spare time, but it's really great because I can take my friends with me, so I get to see people whilst doing like this second thing that I absolutely love doing. And like I said, it opens up all these other doors and opportunities. Like I'm actually off to Aberdeen tomorrow for the first time for a stay up there, which has come from my blog, so that's really exciting as well. And I've been working with a hotel in Greece, so it keeps me very preoccupied.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It sounds absolutely exhausting listening to everything. So have you got any new projects in the pipeline that you can tell us about?
So I'm working quite closely with Colgate at the moment. I've been doing some bits for their kind of student section. So moving into 2023, I know we're potentially going to talk more about my behaviour changes with various things. I've also been asked to be involved in a publication, which I won't say too much more about, which is really exciting actually, to even be considered at this stage of my life to be on a board is incredible, I think. And yeah, it's just trying to just get through kind of, I think as we come out of COVID will be the next thing, and how I can really work on Emmy and how I can keep going with my food blog really.
Well, it all sounds absolutely brilliant. So I've got one question, my final question for you. It's got nothing to do with teeth. And I hope it's not too difficult for you, because I actually woke up at 4 o'clock this morning thinking what my answer would be. So if you were shipwrecked on a desert island, and we're going to assume, obviously, that you've got your toothbrush, your toothpaste, your floss, your interproximal brushes, what other 2 items would you want to have with you?
Oh, I think I would have to have my hairbrush, because I have the biggest thing about having knots in my hair. And I just, that sounds really weird, but I hate my hair like having knots or just feeling like really like ratty. So that would have to be my hairbrush.
So you wouldn't resort to using your toothbrush instead?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I'd be that solved to drastic measures. I don't know. I think maybe sun cream, or a good SPF as well, to look after the skin, because obviously that's very important as well. Yeah, I think I'd go with those 2 items maybe.
Oh, well, completely different to my 2 that I came up with this morning. So I came up with a radio.
Yes,
so at least
very good.
I'd have some music and some sort of, background conversation, and fairy lights I thought as well, that I could drape artistically around the palm trees.
Oh, very nice, very artistic.
Yes, yeah, so not bothered about my hair, which always looks like I've been pulled through a hedge backwards. Anyway, Amber, thank you so much for your time. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and I wish you well with the rest of your career. Keep us updated with everything that you do, because it all sounds absolutely amazing. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been really great to talk to you.